You sit down at the kitchen table to start your morning, and before the coffee even cools, there it is. That low, heavy ache you have come to expect before the day has properly begun. You shift in the chair, looking for the angle that is a little kinder, the same way you have for longer than you can say. The creams helped for a day, maybe two. The fiber, the softeners, all of it kept things manageable for a while. But nothing has touched the thing underneath. If you want to understand why hemorrhoids past 50 keep returning no matter what you apply, stop looking to your sitting habits and stop looking at the pharmacy shelf. Look instead at a mineral your body stopped drawing properly from food decades ago, one that almost no routine appointment ever tests for. What you find there will change how you see this. I am Rebecca Yoder, and I am glad you found your way here today. Think about what this condition quietly takes from your days. Think about your granddaughter's next piano recital, sitting all the way through from the first note to the last bow, your attention on her face and not on that familiar pull that tells you to shift, to stand, to step out early. That kind of morning, that kind of afternoon is worth staying to the end of this video. Folks past 50 are told to drink more water, eat more fiber, and use the right product. These things help some, but the cause that lives underneath this condition, the one rooted in how the body absorbs a specific mineral after 60, is rarely addressed in a short appointment. It is not in a prescription. There is no pill for what the gut has slowly stopped receiving from food. The old ways in our community knew exactly where to look, and what they found has kept our older folks comfortable for generations. Stay with me. My name is Rebecca Yoder. I have lived my whole life in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and for 65 years I have walked alongside my neighbors, learning from my mother and she from hers across 5 generations. Our folks do not turn first to the hospital for every trouble. We begin in the kitchen, in the garden, in the old practices that have kept our community whole across more decades than I can count. My grandmother told me something when I was still a young woman learning to put up the fall vegetables. She said all suffering begins in the belly. She said it plainly, the way you state something that has simply always been true. She had watched enough of our neighbors to know that when the gut was not absorbing and not moving the way it should, the trouble found its way into the veins, the muscles, the lower body, the sleep, and the spirit. What she passed to my mother and my mother passed to me has held true across every decade I have been paying attention. Researchers who came to Lancaster County to study our older community found, to their surprise, lower rates of chronic digestive and vascular troubles among our folks than they had expected. They left with their notebooks full. In our community, that kind of finding would have prompted a quiet nod and a return to the kitchen. Nothing more. My grandmother did not have this condition past one difficult year in her 60s. Her mother before her, my own mother, and 5 generations of our women, living well past 80, spoke of hemorrhoids not as something permanent, but as a signal the body sent when something had run low. When those researchers came to our county, they expected something they could write up in a paper. What they found was a community that had simply never stopped paying attention to what the body was asking for. They left a little quieter than when they had arrived. Now, what you are about to hear will likely change what you believed about this trouble. One piece of this recovery, the part our neighbors do with a single ingredient from their own pantry, will surprise you if you have only ever thought of this as a problem of how you sit or how old you are. 9 out of 10 folks I have spoken with about this have never once thought about the mineral their body most needs when vein walls and the tissue around them begin to weaken. And the order of what I share today matters. Each part builds on the one before it. Stay all the way to the end, because the most important piece comes last. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me your age and how long this has been a quiet part of your days. Has anything helped, even a little? I read every single comment on this channel, and what you share shapes exactly what I teach next. You are not alone in this, and your words matter more than you may think. Here is what we are going to move through today. First, I will show you what is actually happening inside the vein walls and the smooth muscle tissue after 50, because what the body is signaling goes much deeper than most people hear about. Second, I will walk through the 3 quiet forces that keep this condition returning even when you are doing many things right on the surface. Third, I will share the single pantry food that works directly on the mineral root of all 3 of those forces at once. And at the very end, I will give you the one evening restoration practice that brings everything together into one small, steady daily act. Do not leave before we get there. One small favor before we begin. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, would you take 2 seconds and do that now? Many of our neighbors did not realize they had never subscribed until they came looking for a video they had seen and could not find it again. Subscribing costs nothing and helps this teaching reach more folks your age who are carrying what you are carrying. I am grateful for every one of you. Now let us begin with what you may already know in your own body. The pressure comes first, low and dull, sometimes turning sharp without warning. The itch that finds you in a quiet moment, a little bleeding that frightens you more than the discomfort itself. You have learned to lower yourself carefully out of your chair in the morning, reaching for the arms, testing the angle. You know which seats are kinder than others and which ones are not worth the cost. You have planned around this in small ways you have never said out loud to anyone. That is real. That is your body signaling something specific. Vein walls do not soften and rectal tissue does not lose its tone simply because years have passed. Something is missing that was once present, and the body has been asking to receive it again for a long time now. The cause that our tradition pointed to long before anyone put it in a journal is a quiet depletion of a single mineral, one that the smooth muscle tissue surrounding the veins of the lower body depends on to stay firm, responsive, and properly tensioned. Here is how this works in plain terms. Magnesium is what allows smooth muscle fibers to release their tension fully and then contract again without becoming sluggish. When the body runs low on this mineral, smooth muscle slows. The veins lose their ability to return blood efficiently. The connective tissue that holds the structures of the lower rectum in their proper position begins to give over time. Think of the rubber washers inside an old pump handle, the kind you would find on a well in a dry summer. When the rubber has gone without what it needs, it loses its shape under pressure. It compresses where it should hold and gives where it should seal. That is what prolonged low magnesium does to the tissue down there, slowly and without any single obvious moment when it happened. Here is the aging reality. After 60, the small intestine absorbs roughly 30 to 40% less magnesium from the same foods than it did at 40. The kidneys also begin to release more through urine as their filtering changes with age. A woman eating the same foods she has always eaten is working with the same amount coming in and a fraction of what she once absorbed. This is not a failure. This is a change the body made without announcement, and one that a 15-minute appointment almost never catches. My grandmother spoke of needing to feed the muscle from the inside. She had watched enough neighbors apply creams for years without lasting relief to know that the deeper work happened at a level that nothing applied to the outside could reach. She held that understanding the way she held all of her most reliable knowledge, quietly and without exception. 3 forces keep this condition from resolving even in neighbors who are already doing a great deal right. The first is the straining cycle. When magnesium is low, the bowel moves slowly and the stool becomes harder and more effortful to pass. That straining raises the pressure inside the abdomen and presses directly against the veins of the lower rectum, keeping them swollen over time. You may have heard that more fiber addresses this, and fiber does help move things along. But if the smooth muscle that coordinates the whole process is depleted of this mineral, fiber alone cannot restore what is no longer there to give. The second force is what I call the quiet electrolyte gap. Many folks past 50 carry a persistent, low-level dehydration that never feels dramatic but never fully resolves. When this combines with low mineral stores in the blood thickens slightly. Thicker blood moves slowly through small vessels. The veins of the lower body, already under pressure from the straining cycle, receive pooled blood that cannot drain the way it should. Long hours of sitting will make the discomfort more noticeable. But the blood needs what it has been losing, and that is where the true adjustment must begin. The third force is gut inflammation working quietly against absorption. And this is where I need to pause for a moment. After 60, the population of healthy bacteria in the gut can decline by 40 to 50%. Many folks hear this and reach for a probiotic, and that is a reasonable first step. But probiotics alone will fail without prebiotic fiber to feed and sustain them, and even that is only part of the picture. The true healing compounds the bacteria produce are called postbiotics. These are what actually calm the gut lining and restore the mineral absorption pathways the body depends on. Think of a kitchen garden. Seeds need good soil beneath them, and the soil must be capable of yielding the harvest those seeds were planted to produce. All three must be working together or the cycle cannot complete itself. When the gut lining carries low-grade inflammation, the mineral in your food and in any supplement you try cannot be received by the tissue that most needs it. The hemorrhoid condition holds because the interior terrain cannot take in what is being offered. Dorothy comes to mind here, 67 years old, retired school teacher from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a quiet and capable woman who had been using every standard product faithfully for close to 3 years when she came to sit with me at my kitchen table. What was overlooked in her situation was that she had taken 2 full rounds of antibiotics in the 4 years before we spoke, each one for a recurring sinus infection. Her gut flora had been significantly reduced and had never recovered. Within 11 weeks of addressing both her gut terrain and the mineral food I'm about to share, her straining reduced by roughly 60%. The tissue inflammation around the affected area improved visibly. She told me, "Rebecca, I had been trying to fix the outside of this trouble all along, and the whole time the answer was starting on the inside. Now, the food I want to share with you has been on our pantry shelf for as long as our family can remember. It addresses the mineral root of everything we have just discussed. Before I walk you through the full protocol for it, I want to take a moment and share something I recommend to the neighbors who ask me about restoring the gut terrain we were just discussing. Let me pause for a moment here because this is the question I hear most often from the folks who have been following along. What do I personally use to support what we were just talking about? The gut lining, the bacteria, the absorption. BoochBod is a kombucha gummy, not a capsule or a pill, which matters to many of us who already have a full routine to manage each day. What I value about it is that it works on all 3 parts at once. It contains prebiotic fiber to sustain the good bacteria, the probiotic strains lactospore and postbiotics LM1004 that have been specifically studied for this kind of work. And the postbiotics, the healing compounds the bacteria produce, the ones we were just talking about. It also contains dandelion root, which my grandmother used as a spring tonic for the belly, and slippery elm, which the older women in our community kept on hand for any gut trouble. Over 30,000 people are already using it. The link is in the description below whenever you are ready. And as I always say, speak to your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you are already managing other conditions. Now to the food itself. Blackstrap molasses is the dark, thick syrup that remains when cane sugar has been refined to its final stage. The refining removes the sugar and leaves behind everything the cane plant drew from the soil across its whole growing life. Magnesium in significant amounts, roughly 48 milligrams in 2 tablespoons, which comes close to 15% of what the body needs in a full day. Potassium for the health of vessel walls. Iron to support healthy blood movement. Calcium. B vitamins that support nerve function in the tissue surrounding the veins that have been under pressure for too long. My grandmother called it the dark tonic. She kept it on her kitchen shelf through every season, and every year I knew her. Women in our community who came to her with vein troubles were offered this before any other remedy. She did not explain it at length. She handed it over in a small cup of warm water, and she said, "Drink this slowly in the evening and do not miss a day." What nutritional researchers have now come to understand is that magnesium plays a direct role in the tone and responsiveness of smooth muscle in vein walls and in the internal sphincter that governs pressure in the lower rectum. Research in nutritional medicine suggests that adults past 60 with the lowest dietary magnesium intake show meaningfully higher rates of chronic venous insufficiency and rectal vascular distension than those who maintain adequate magnesium stores through their later years. The laboratories have now caught up to what our tradition observed. My grandmother would have recognized that finding without needing anyone to explain it to her. Here is the full protocol. Take 2 tablespoons of blackstrap molasses dissolved in warm water each evening before bed. Not hot, just warm enough to dissolve it easily. This must be blackstrap molasses, the dark and somewhat bitter variety, not the regular molasses from the baking shelf. If what you have tastes sweet and light, it is the wrong product. If it is dark, thick, and carries a slightly bitter warmth with something almost smoky underneath, that is what you are looking for. Find the word unsulfured on the label when you can. It simply means no chemical preservative was added during processing. Drink it slowly, the way you would a cup of tea at the end of a long day. The warmth itself helps the lower digestive muscles soften and relax, supporting easier movement through the night and into the early morning. Most of my neighbors notice the first shift in 2 to 3 weeks. The morning movement becomes softer and less effortful, which begins to ease the straining cycle we discussed. By 4 to 6 weeks, neighbors who are consistent notice the first easing in the pressure and swelling of the affected area as magnesium stores begin to rebuild. By 3 months, those who have stayed with this daily practice have found relief they had stopped believing was still available to them. Harold is someone I carry with me when I share this teaching. 74 years old, retired postal carrier from Savannah, Georgia, a man who had spent 30 years on his feet for a living and whose hemorrhoids had been a daily companion through much of the decade since he stopped working. What was overlooked in Harold's situation was that he had been on a diuretic medication for his blood pressure for several years before we spoke, and diuretics pull both magnesium and potassium from the body through the urine with every dose. His mineral stores had been quietly draining for years, and no one had made note of it. Within 2 months of the evening molasses practice alongside attention to his gut terrain, his daily discomfort had reduced by roughly 55%. The intermittent bleeding that had been worrying him stopped within 6 weeks. He told me, "Rebecca, I had no idea something sitting on a kitchen shelf could do what years of doctors and products could not." One additional word of care here. If you are managing diabetes or actively monitoring blood sugar, blackstrap molasses does contain natural sugars, and you will want to speak with your doctor about how to incorporate this safely. For most folks past 50 who are otherwise in stable health, 2 tablespoons in warm water each evening is a gentle and well-tolerated practice. After 65 years of watching what actually works, let me give you 4 things I have come to trust completely. Tip 1. Time your molasses practice in the evening, not the morning. Smooth muscle in the bowel follows its most natural relaxation cycle overnight. Magnesium taken in the evening is present and available during the hours the body is already doing that quiet work. Morning use will not cause harm, but evening use compounds what the body is already doing on its own schedule. Tip 2. Consistency matters far more than quantity. 2 tablespoons every evening for 3 months will do more lasting good than 4 tablespoons every few days whenever you remember. The body rebuilds mineral stores slowly and steadily, not in sudden surges. Moderate daily practice always yields more than occasional large efforts. Tip 3. Pair your molasses with a small amount of fat. A teaspoon of butter stirred into the warm water, or a small handful of walnuts taken alongside it, improves the absorption of fat-soluble compounds that work together with the mineral content. In our kitchen, a little cream was always stirred in. That was not indulgence. That was long practice and good sense. Tip 4. Look for improvement on the right timeline. Many of my neighbors expect results in days because they are used to products that reduce surface inflammation quickly. Mineral rebuilding moves from the inside out, and it takes weeks. Expect the first real shift at 4 to 6 weeks. If you notice no change by week 8, bring this to your doctor and ask about having your magnesium levels measured directly. 3 mistakes I watch neighbors make when they begin this. Mistake 1, using regular molasses instead of blackstrap. Regular molasses has been refined to the point where most of the mineral content is no longer present. It is lighter, noticeably sweeter, and will not carry what you are looking for. Blackstrap must be dark and slightly bitter. The bitterness is the sign the minerals are still there. Mistake 2, stopping too early. The body takes time to recover what was depleted over years, and most neighbors who gave up after 2 or 3 weeks did so because they expected faster results. Give this 8 weeks before drawing any conclusions. 3 months will show you far more than 3 weeks could. Mistake 3. Treating the molasses as a complete answer without addressing the gut's ability to receive what it carries. Everything we covered about the gut lining, the bacteria, the absorption pathways, all of that determines whether the mineral in the molasses reaches the tissue that needs it. Bringing the mineral without preparing the terrain is working with only half of what is required. Now I want to close with something I have said to every neighbor who has sat across from me over the years. Think about the Saturday afternoon when your youngest grandchild settles in close and wants you to read to her for a full hour. You want to be still for all of it, your full attention on her and the words in the book, not on managing the discomfort that pulls you elsewhere. And think about moving through your morning without the careful planning, without the deliberate way you lower yourself into the first chair of the day, measuring the cost before you sit. These are the things your body is reaching toward. It is never too late to give the body what it has been missing. I have watched women at 75 and at 82 begin this practice and find their way back to comfort they had stopped expecting was still possible for them. You are the driver of this body. You have always been. Let me gather what we covered today. First, the hidden cause. Magnesium deficiency weakens the smooth muscle tone and vein wall integrity the lower body depends on, and absorption declines significantly after 60, regardless of how well you eat. Second, the straining cycle. Low magnesium slows the bowel. Harder stools require straining, and repeated straining compresses the veins of the lower rectum over time, keeping the condition active. Third, the electrolyte gap. Persistent mineral loss in the blood thickens it slightly, which reduces venous drainage in the lower body and keeps veins under sustained pressure. Fourth, gut inflammation and absorption. When the gut lining is inflamed and the bacterial population is depleted, the mineral in food and supplements cannot be fully received by the tissue that most needs it. Fifth, the recovery food and protocol. 2 tablespoons of unsulfured blackstrap molasses in warm water each evening, taken consistently for at least 8 to 12 weeks, to begin restoring the magnesium stores the body has been carrying too low for too long. And the master evening restoration, the daily practice that brings everything together, the dark tonic, taken slowly before sleep as a quiet and steady act of giving the body what it has been asking to receive for years. If this teaching reached you today, I want to ask one small thing. Subscribe to this channel if you have not yet, and share this video with a spouse or a sibling or the oldest friend you have who might be carrying something like what you came here with. Leave a comment below and tell me which part of this surprised you most, or which habit you are starting first. I read every single comment on this channel, and I will answer when I am able. The BoochBod link I mentioned is waiting in the description below whenever you are ready to take a look. From Lancaster County, with much warmth for all of you, I am Rebecca Yoder. Thank you for sitting with me today.